Hello everyone, welcome to our today's class. In this session, first I will talk about the FDD methodology. Then we can talk about the research subject of your course and the final exam if you have any question. So let's start the FDD. Another methodology from the Agile category that we will talk about in this class is the FDD. FDD is the abbreviation of Feature-Driven Development Methodology, which was introduced first by DeLuca and Code in 1999. The original version was a tailored complement to the object modeling in color technique, if you know this technique. But we have a revised version that was published by Palmer and Felsing in 2002. This version has been completely decoupled from the modeling in color technique, and so it was general enough to be considered as an independent methodology. The FDD is based on expressing and realizing the requirements in terms of small user-valued pieces of functionality. These small pieces are called features. So the requirements are expressed in terms of features, and these features are going to be realized and developed to complete the software, to implement the software. The FDD is not a full life cycle methodology because it doesn't cover all the activities of a full life cycle methodology. Some of the activities from the beginning of the life cycle are not covered in FDD, such as the feasibility study and also the overall project planning. They should be done, and also we should establish a business case, and if it is required to grant some permissions from the sponsors to go on with the development, it all should be performed, and after that we can start the FDD methodology. So these activities are not covered in FDD. And also at the end of the software development life cycle, some of the activities are going to be remained after the FDD methodology is completed. Activities such as the system level verification and validation, system testing or acceptance testing, and also ultimate system deployment and maintenance are not covered in the FDD. So some of the activities at the end of the life cycle are not covered in FDD. Mr. Al-Hajami, yes, your question about the crystal. I forgot to ask about your questions from the previous slide. Sorry. Yes, Mr. Al-Hajami. the size in crystal is just about the people that are involved. Okay, so the level of the people are involved are very different. For example, we have the 6 people, and after that we have 20 people, and after that we have 40 people. Okay, so the numbers are very different. We don't have 6 people and then 8 people. So you're going to estimate the number of people that are involved. If you estimate the number of people that are involved are less than 10 people, then you need to deploy the crystal clear. If you estimate the number of people that are involved are going to be something between 15 to, for example, 25, then you should deploy the crystal orange. Okay, so it's only the number of people that are involved, not just developers, all the people that are involved, all the stakeholders. And who will determine that? I think the project manager should determine that. Okay, Mr. Al-Hajami? Mr. Al-Hajami, can you hear my voice? Do you have my voice? Mr. Al-Yasseri, in this slide you mean? Okay, Mr. Al-Hajami. Mr. Al-Yasseri, in this slide, you mean the verification? We don't have the verification in the FDD. It should be done separately. In FDD, we have just unit testing. Okay, Mr. Al-Yasseri, in FDD, we just have unit testing. All the testing, all the other verification, other levels of testing, yes, should be done after FDD. Thank you, Mr. Al-Yasseri. Okay, so if there is not any other question, we can continue. Mr. Al-Zubaydi, yes, the features in the FDD, we mean the features of the final product. We mean the features of the final product. Yes, they are the same features of the final software. Okay, Mr. Al-Zubaydi? Features of the final software, the requirements of the software are represented as features. Okay. In feature-driven development, for expressing features, we have general templates. Features are relatively fine-grained functions of the system that are expressed in client value terms. So features are functions of the system, small pieces of functions of the system of the final software, and these functions should have value for the client, for the final users, for the customers. So we will express them also in client value terms. This is the general template for expressing features. We have three parts in this template. The first part is the action, the second one is the result, and the third one is the object. For example, here we have two examples of features. For example, consider a software, a human resource management HRM software. One of the features of such software is that it should calculate the total value of a shipment. For a shipping software or for a online retail store software. So this is a feature for such software. This feature tells us about an action. The action is calculating. About a result. The result is the total value. And about an object. The object is a shipment. So the final software should be able to calculate the total value of a shipment, action, result, object. Another feature is that check the availability of seats on a flight. For example, if we want to develop a software for tickets, for selling online tickets, one of the features of such software is to check the availability of seats on a flight. Action, result, and object. So for the software that you're going to develop, you need to express all of its features in this template. So for each software, we're going to produce a big list of features. The granularity of each feature should be such that it would take no more than 2 weeks to develop. So you should consider the features and consider the time of developing each feature. That feature should not be very small or very big. The time for developing that software should not be more than 2 weeks. If you have a feature that is big and will take more than 2 weeks to develop, then you should break down that feature into smaller features. So all the requirements of your software should be represented in a list of features that are presented in this template, in this general template. So we have a big list of these features. We have so many features in a system for any software. When you write down the features, the number of features should be very big. So we will categorize those features. Each feature is identified as a step in one or more activities. So when you look at the features, some of the features, for example, 5 of the features or 10 of the features or 20 of the features can be identified as steps of a big activity, of one or more activities. We call these activities also feature sets. So we have some features and we can categorize all those features as a feature set. Then we should name that feature set. For each feature set, we use the action plus ing plus the object. For example, reserving a seat. Reserving a seat. This is the name of a feature set. In the previous slide, we had a feature. This feature check the availability of seats on a flight. This feature and some other features, when we look at them, all of them are belong to an activity that is called reserving a seat. Reserve the action plus ing plus the object. Reserving a seat. So after we look at all the features in our list, we can identify many activities. Each activity consists of multiple features. And after looking to all these activities or all these feature sets, these activities belong to areas. Some of the activities are related and belong to areas or major feature sets. We need to also name the major feature set or the areas. For these areas, we use this template. We use the name of object and plus the word management. For example, reservations management. So we have 3 layers of features or steps, activities or feature sets, areas or major feature set. An area includes multiple activities and each activity includes multiple steps. So we have areas. In each area we have multiple activities. And in each activity, we have multiple steps. This layering of big areas and activities and then small features or steps will help the developers to manage the complexity of requirements. If you look at the areas, these are the general requirements of the system. And the features are the smaller features of the system because each area includes multiple steps, multiple activities, and multiple steps. So this will help us to manage the complexity of requirements. These requirements are divided into or partitioned into multiple features. Based on these 3 layers, we can also partition features into those layers. So we have features that belong to area layer, we have features that belong to activity layer, we have features that belong to steps layer. This is the proposed system architecture. We have the top layer, we have the middle layer, and we have the lower layer, the upper layer, middle layer, and the lower layer. The FDD methodology has a straightforward process. The FDD process has 5 sub-processes, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 sub-processes. The first three sub-processes are sequential, developing an overall model, building a feature list, and plan by feature. These are sequential. And the last two sub-processes are iterative. We're going to repeat these two sub-processes again and again. So we have iterations of designing and building, designing and building, designing and building, designing and building. So after these three sub-processes, after developing an overall model, building a feature list, and then planning by those features in our list, then we need to design some of a subset of features and build them. Design a subset of features and build them. Design and build, design and build. We have iterations. In each iteration, we have designing and building. In the developing an overall model, we need to shape the model and also the core methods. We will create an object model, which is usually a class diagram. Then we need to in this sub-process, we also create an informal feature list. And if we need to add more information into our model, we use nodes, an alternative that we can have in our model or in our overall model. Then we're going to build a feature list, a categorized list of features. Then we're going to create a development plan based on those features. And then in the iterations, we're going to, in each iteration, we're going to design a package and then complete the client values function, implement that function. Okay, for your questions, let me read your questions. Mr. Aliaseri. Yes, Mr. Aliaseri, the features are going to be implemented in parallel. Features are going to be implemented in parallel. I will talk about this later on how they can be implemented in parallel. We're going to have teams for each feature set, and the developers are going to be responsible for classes, and so we have so many developers working on, everyone working on a class. Mr. Zobaid, if we have a big feature, the feature that will take, for example, 4 weeks, then we should break that feature into 2 smaller features that each feature will take 2 weeks. Okay, so if we have a big feature, we need to break that big feature, only that big feature, into 2 smaller features or into 3 smaller features. Then each one of those small features can be implemented in less than 2 weeks. Okay, is it clear, Mr. Zobaid? Mr. Zobaid, is it clear?
سلام خانم شیرازی خوبی؟ الهی بگردم حتما به خاطر این سرماخوردگی که گرفته درست عزیزم چون گفتیم یکم سفالت داره شاید به خاطر همون میگفته دارم فقط تشریف قبلی منظورتون نام نصاب بود الفبا بوده. خب بسیار عالی عزیزم. حالا بقیه‌اش رو هم همینجوری خورد ذره ذره باهاش کار کنین انجام بدین برای من بفرستین. ایرادی نداره. خب بسیار عالی عزیزم. حالا بقیه‌اش رو هم همینجوری خورد ذره ذره باهاش کار کنین انجام بدین برای من بفرستین. ایرادی نداره.
Yes, Mr. White. Okay, excuse me for Mr. Habib. Which method is better, small or big? We want to have features that are less than 2 weeks. Okay, so we have a constraint on the size of features. We cannot have features that are too big and need more than 2 weeks to be implemented. So we need to have features that are somehow the same size. Okay? Okay, thank you for your good questions. So let's continue the slide. If you have any question, please ask your question. Okay, let's go to the process. Mr. Ali Yosseri. No, Mr. Ali Yosseri. No, Mr. Ali Yosseri. We have, let me show you. Okay, let me stop this. Okay, we have a list of features. For example, feature 1, it was, what was it? Reserving a seat Okay, what was that? Let me show. Use these examples. Check the availability of seats. Okay. So the first, so we have the list of features. Okay, list of features. Okay, the list of features includes some features. For example, the first one is check the availability of seats. Then, for example, to reserve a seat, reserve a ticket for a seat. Then, for example, cancel a ticket for a seat. For example, then we can say check the time of a flight. Check the type of a flight. Here we can say that check the type of a seat. Then we can say reserve a whole flight, for example, for agency. So we have a list of features and so on, and more features. Okay, and then we see that some of these features are belong to one category. So we can say all these features and all these features. Okay, so we can tell that this is an activity, a feature set, and this one is also another feature set. A feature set. Okay, Mr. Aliasari? Okay. And these two feature sets, we can call it a major feature set. Okay. Thank you very much. A major feature set is also called area. Feature sets are also called activities. Okay. So in a major feature set, we have multiple feature sets, and each feature set has multiple features. Each feature set has multiple features. Okay. Thank you very much for your good question. Okay. So let's get back to our slide. Okay, I think I have the connection. So let's continue the subprocesses. Okay, do you have the slides? Can you see the slides? And can you hear my voice now? Do you have my voice in the class? Mr. Amir, do you have my voice? Can you see the slides now? Thank you, Mr. Ali. Thank you very much. Okay, so let's continue the FDD process. Now let's talk about each one of these subprocesses, the sequential subprocesses and the iterative subprocesses. The first subprocess is developing an overall model. Developing an overall model includes building a mainly structural model of the problem domain, which is called the object model. This structural model is usually a class diagram in the UML modeling language. The second subprocess that is sequential, is building a feature list. In this subprocess, we should identify the required functionality of the system, of the final software, and we should express those functionalities as features and feature sets. Then we need to plan by those features. We should schedule the features for development. Usually each feature set or each activity are assigned to chief programmers. We will talk about that. And also the classes in the object model are usually assigned to developers. So each class has an owner, which is one of our developers, and each feature set also is assigned to a chief programmer. These are the flowcharts or the activity diagrams of these sequential subprocesses. The first one, developing an overall model, we need to first form a development team. We will talk about the members of this team. Then they will conduct a domain walkthrough. They will study some of the documents if we have available documents. Then they should develop small group models, and from these group models we will select one of those group models as a team model, or we will merge the capabilities of the better ones into a team model, and then we should refine the overall object model, the final class model, and if we need to add additional information to those models, we can use nodes and add some nodes to our models. The second sub-process, which is building a feature list, has two steps. First, we need to form the feature list team. Again, we will talk about this team. And they should build the feature list. They can also, again, study the domain information. The third sub-process is plan by feature. We should first form a planning team. Again, we will talk about this team. Then they should determine the development sequence and assign feature sets to chief programmers and assign each one of the classes into developers. These three activities can be conducted in parallel. These are the activities in the first three sub-processes, which are sequential sub-processes. The first number one, number two, and number three. These are the sequential sub-processes. Now let's talk about these two sub-processes, the iterative sub-processes, design by feature and build by feature. Let's talk about these two sub-processes. So the iterative sub-processes, the first one is design by features. We need to determine how those features should be realized at runtime. So we will use the behavioral models, and we will identify the interactions among objects. For example, we can use sequence diagrams. The next sub-process is building by features. We should code each one of the features. For example, each feature can be developed as one class or multiple classes. After coding each feature, we need to test that feature. So we need to do unit testing for each class or unit testing for each feature. After coding and testing, when we are assured that that feature is working well, then we can use those implemented items. We can use those classes and promoted them to the main build. So these are the activity diagram of these two sub-processes. First, for design by feature, we need to form a feature team. This feature team first conduct a domain walkthrough and also study the reference docs. If we have available documents, they can study those documents. And then they should develop the sequence diagrams and a sequence diagram for representing the interactions between objects. The object model or the class diagram should be refined that can be support those sequence diagrams. And then write the classes and methods prologues, and we need to do an inspection on our design. The next sub-process is building by feature. We need to code the feature and implement the required classes. Then we can do the code inspection and do the unit testing. We can do these in parallel, so we can do the inspection before unit testing or after unit testing. And after getting assured that the code is working fine, then we can promote those implemented items into the final build. These sub-processes are here, those 5 sub-processes: developing an overall model, building a feature list, planning, building, and designing. These are the feature-driven development sub-processes, but there are other activities that can complete the FDD process. As we said before, the FDD process doesn't cover all the activities in a full life cycle, in a full generic life cycle. Activities like some of the management or organization activities like management sponsorship, overall planning, budget preparation or planning, resource management, issue management, change management. We need to have these activities along the FDD process, and system level testing, high levels of testing, system testing, load testing, acceptance testing, the deployments and maintenance. These are some of the activities that are not covered in the FDD process, and these surrounding activities sometimes are also required for the development of our final software. Okay, let's talk about the sub-processes of FDD in more details. The first sub-process was to develop an overall model. In this sub-process, first we need to form the modeling team. The modeling team consists of several development experts or chief programmers. So we have several chief programmers in the modeling team. We need one or more domain experts for domain walkthrough. And all of these chief programmers and domain experts work under the guidance of a modeling expert or a chief architect. So in each modeling team, we have one chief architect, we have several domain experts, and several chief programmers. So in our modeling team, we have a modeling expert as the leader, and several domain experts and development experts. After that, we have an iterative activity and iterative cycles, modeling cycles, to produce the final object model. The first activity is to do an overview of the problem domain. This overview is usually presented by the domain expert. Then the problem domain is partitioned into some areas, and for each area we do the modeling. This modeling is also an iterative task, an iterative activity. So for each area we will iteratively do these activities. For each area, we will conduct a domain area walkthrough. This is again aided by domain expert. Then if we have any problem domain area document, we should study them. Then we develop small group models. So for each area, each domain area, we develop small group models. Then we will develop a team model. The team model is producing by selecting one of the group models or by merging the best ideas from those group models. Then the model is integrated into the overall object model. For example, consider an area to be modeled as multiple classes. Then we will integrate our classes into the overall class diagram. And if there is any additional information about aspects of the model that cannot be explicitly addressed by the model itself, we can add some notes to the model to provide those information into our models. The next sub-process is building a feature list. We first should form the feature list team. The feature list team consists of the project management and the chief programmers. You remember that chief programmers also participate in the modeling team. here in the previous slide, we have the chief programmers. Those chief programmers also participate in the feature list team. So we have the project manager and multiple chief programmers. They will build the feature list. The feature list then can be categorized into a hierarchical list, a 3-layer hierarchical list, just like the example that we had in the class. We have a list of areas or major feature list. For each area, for each major feature list, we have a list of activities within that area. And then for each activity, we have a list of features as the steps of that activity. So we have a list of areas. For each area, we have a list of activities. And for each activity, we have a list of features or steps. For building the feature list, we use a top-down fashion. Based on these 3 layers, we first will identify the areas or high-level feature sets. We will identify areas by carefully investigating the knowledge acquired about the problem domain. And then for each area, we will look for activities or low-level feature sets. And then in each activity, we try to identify the features or steps of that activity. So we will try to build the feature list in a top-down fashion. The next sub-process is plan by feature. For planning, we need to form the planning team. The planning team consists of the project manager and the chief programmers. And also we need a development manager. Development manager is the leader of the planning team and will supervise the chief programmers. The planning team should determine the development sequence by scheduling the development of the feature sets, and then they should specify a date for the completion of each feature set. A completion date or deadline is also determined for each one of the areas based on the activities in that area. Then they should assign each feature set to a chief programmer and declare them as the owners of that feature set. And we will assign classes to developers, and those developers are called class owners. They are responsible for implementing those classes. Okay, for your questions. Mr. Al-Hajami, how FDD is feasible and suitable for Mr. Al-Hajami, for complex and long-term projects, I don't think the agile methodology is right. Okay, so if you have a complex project, I think you should use other methodologies. Okay, Mr. Al-Hajami? If it's not very complex, then you can use the FDD and you can express the requirements by means of features and okay. And Mr. Zubaydi, Mr. افرازFdd. I don't understand your question. Mr. افرازFdd. I don't understand your question. Mr. Zobaid, not such diverse, but yes, for each uh, for each feature set, we will assign a team, a development team. Not each process, each feature set. Each feature set has a development team. Okay. So I think the iterations will. Okay. Let's stop now and talk about the research. You should do a research for your course. Okay, let me upload this file. Okay, I think today I have some problems. I cannot move the slide. Okay, so you now can see this picture, right? Okay, this is the description of your research as you remember from the introduction of our course. In your course, you have a midterm exam, which has 8 points, and we have a final exam. The final exam is also has 8 points, and you need to do a research. Your research has also 4 points. The deadline of your research is due to... Yes, Mr. افرازFdd. Yes, it's up to 5 students. You can write your report as a team of 2 students. The deadline is until Friday, 15th of Bahman. You should write a short report about 20 pages and you should upload it on the DARSA website. I will define a research tag list. You should upload it on the research tag list. For your subject, I will upload a file of suggested list of subjects on the DARSA website, and you can select your subject from them. Mr. افرازFdd, I will give you the subjects. You will select one of those subjects. Okay? You should select your subject from the list. I will upload the list on the DARSA website. Okay? Thank you. For your subject, you should email your selected subject to this address, mb_kha@yahoo.com. If your subject was approved, then you can start your research. Okay, so first you should get approval for your subject. Okay. Okay, I think I will the last part of the FDD process will be remain for the next session. The next session is our last session of this semester. Report of your research, Mr. افرازFdd. Report of the results of your research. Okay? The report is result of your research. I don't know if you hear my voice. Okay. Report of the results of your research. Okay? So you do your research and you should write a report. Okay, until the next session, if you have any question about the course or about your final exam or about your research, please send me an email. Your final exam is also from slide number 4 and 5 and 6 and 7. I will also teach you the slide number 7 at the next session. It's a small slide. Okay, if you don't have any question, we can finish our today's session and continue our course in the next session. Thank you very much. Have a good day and goodbye. خدا نگهدار. خدا حافظ.